Good. So I'm not crocheting or knitting on the front slide of my talk. That's me with two hula hoops. So we'll discover in a minute why I'm talking about hula hoops as I present some mathematics. So my first tip about talking mathematics to general audiences would be make sure you know your audience. So here's one of my audiences. It was a very large audience. There were over 1,000 people there. You can see that a lot of them are school children. It was actually at a presentation of prizes for students who'd been part of the Maths Talent Quest in Victoria. So there was a fair air of excitement in the room, and a bit like today, I was standing between them and their prizes. So I had to keep it snappy. There was also a lot of parents there and teachers there. So it was quite a wide audience and very young. Now, they were interested in maths, so that was a good thing. So that's the purpose of the event. It was to give them prizes, but to also excite them about mathematics. The venue was this huge, the Union Hall at the Trobe University, no blackboards, no whiteboards. There was a screen. And fortunately, they gave me a walking microphone. 2 years earlier, I had presented at the same event and I was stuck at the lectern, but this time I had a walking microphone. So all these sorts of things will help you decide what kind of talk you can give and what level to aim it at. So the theme of the talk for the day was the mathematics of Pokemon Go. Pokemon Go was huge at the time, and I thought that that would be a topic that would really suit the interests of the audience that I had. And I also had a few ideas about making it engaging, which brings me to my next point. You really want your audience to engage. And one way to make them engage is to give them something to do. So here's a really obvious way of giving people something to do. I was talking about the mathematics of Pokemon Go, but Pokemon Go really just relies on sat-nav kind of technology. So I had these huge beach balls. They were the biggest ones I could find. And the point of them was that for sat-navs, distance is proportional to time because the speed of the signal is the same. So we had these beach balls to depict the amount of time, or at least the distance, of the mobile phone that was playing Pokemon Go from the satellites. So my first question was, well, if you've got two different satellites and you know how far they are from the person, what does the overlap look like? And so we had these massive beach balls, and the audience managed to tell me that the overlap would look like a circle, which brings me back to my hula hoops, because then we got two hula hoops and we worked out, well, if we know that the phone is on these circles, where do the circles overlap? And we imagined to get the response out of the audience that there would be 2 points. And of course, because you're on the earth, probably one of those points is in the sea, but if necessary, you can use a third circle to narrow it all down. So that was one way to give people something to do. Now, it doesn't work so well in Zoom. So here's another way to give people something to do while you're talking. Have a look at this image and look at it for a while. And when it flips for you, maybe you want to put your thumbs up in the chat. Look at it for a while and suddenly it will flip. Yeah. Has it flipped? Yeah. It's what's called a bistable image. And it is at the heart of many of Escher's diagrams. So one of the other wonderful opportunities I've had in terms of talking maths to the general public was that Trobe was the education partner for the Escher exhibition when it was in Melbourne. And I was able to give a number of different talks at a number of different levels. I gave a talk for people who were doing a summer school subject at La Trobe. I gave a talk for a group of maths teachers. And this image, people suddenly saw for themselves what kind of magic they were going to see in Escher's art. So coming back to that theme of giving people something to do. So this is actually me talking to the evening session, which was a group of maths teachers, but also their partners and other people that they had invited. So the thing that you give them to do can be in their heads or on the screen. We just did something that was on the screen. And I was sort of giving people a bit of homework in a sense at this talk that was before they all went to go through the exhibition, sort of preloading them. So that gave them something to connect to. I was telling them, oh, well, you know, when you go out, you will see such and such. Well, you can do that in a talk for other people as well. So if you're talking about networks, we heard a talk about networks, about exponential growth, those kind of things, link it to something that people will see when they leave your talk, and that will give them something to do, if you like, some level of engagement. I always like to have a bit of suspense in my talk. Where are we going? You know, what's going to happen? Or with the Möbius bands, people could trace this on their screen. This was this on my screen, I guess, on my projection. But this was a talk for maths teachers, most of whom knew about Möbius bands. But when I gave this talk to a group of artists, they were sitting at tables. So in fact, I gave them sticky tape and bits of paper and scissors, and they actually cut a Möbius band in half for themselves and actually discovered what was going on, what was there in the Möbius band. So that was my second point, give them some engagement. Show them or help them discover for themselves, not just tell them about mathematics. So my third point is that you want to give people a flavour for what you do without giving them indigestion. But you want to give them the true flavour. You don't have to water it down too much. But you do want not to overwhelm them. So one line I really like was what Stephen Hawking said about his best-selling book, A Brief History of Time. He was warned that each equation would halve the sales. So I would say that about talks. Just be careful how technical you are when you're talking to a general audience. They don't want it dumbed down, but they don't necessarily need to have their eyes glaze over. You can see here a third venue in which I've given a talk. This is a beautiful venue at the University of Melbourne. It's in the design architecture, redeveloped architecture design building. There wasn't a screen at all. The only thing there was a microphone. So it all had to be in words and imagery and things to look at. So we had big pictures. In some of the other examples I've shown you, in this case, we actually had models. So you can see a Lorentz manifold hanging in the front of the picture, the red one. There was a second one, a blue one, hanging at the back. I'll show you a close-up of it in a minute. And you can see people sitting around at tables like a cafe. They were actually all either crocheting or doing origami. So only half of their attention was on me. So I did need to paint word pictures for them as I described to them the kind of mathematics that they were seeing in their origami or in their crochet. So it's not Stephen Hawking, it's Coco Chanel. My mother told me this one. Before you leave the house, look in the mirror and take one thing off. She was talking about scarves or jewelry or something like that. But I would say the same thing about writing a talk. When you write a talk, go through it and take out something, because it's probably too long the way it is, the way you first write it. Actually, the more talks you write, the better you get at judging that, but it would still be something that I would suggest as part of writing a talk. Now you'll see that I've had some really great opportunities to talk maths to the public, and you might wonder where these opportunities come from. And I was very lucky in that La Trobe has been a partner with some really great themes, so the Maths Talent Quest and also the Escher exhibition. But this is me with my friend and colleague, many of you will recognise, Julia Collins, who was working for ANSI. And prior to coming to Australia, Julia was actually the outreach officer at the University of Edinburgh Maths Department. And her idea was to start this thing called Maths Craft. So this is at the Maths Craft event that we held in conjunction with Science Gallery Melbourne. Science Gallery Melbourne is is just about to start up, really. I mean, it's opened, but it's not opened because of lockdown. But they aim their outreach at that age group 15 to 25. And they have a team of people who work with them that they call the Sci-Curious. And if you are actually interested in talking maths to the public, that might be something to investigate, particularly for that 15 to 25 age group, which is maybe a little bit older than some outreach aims at. But what we found through Mathscraft, which is where we do craft, which relates to maths with the public, is that there's an enormous appetite for learning about maths in the context of people's hobbies. There's lots of maths in other hobbies as well, but it just turns out that Julia and I really like craft. So you can see on the left, I'm holding a dodecahedron that's made out of A4 paper, and hanging up is Julia's Lorentz manifold that she crocheted, and matches the red one that I crocheted. And of course, the other opportunities are to talk at schools or to groups of school children. And again, so maths craft is my interest. Pokemon Go didn't interest me at all, but I figured that that was what would interest that audience. Now, this is a piece of my opinion. Does every talk need an introduction or an introductory slide if you're in a venue where you can have slides? Well, my observation about a lot of talks is that people spend a long time on that introduction slide, and then they end up racing at the end and not being able to show their final slides. The other thing is that if you have an introductory slide and you actually tell people everything you're going to talk about, you lose that element of surprise or suspense or that sort of aha moment, because you've actually told everybody everything from the start. Helmholtz wrote a very famous paper in 1974. Now, if you go and look at it, he does assume that all mathematicians are male. He uses he as the pronoun all the way through. But I do like this quote: "The organization of a talk is like the skeleton of a human. Things would fall apart without it, but it's bad if it shows." So as long as you know what the organization of your talk is, then maybe that's enough, that as long as your talk follows a structure. So I would suggest maybe rather than having a detailed introduction to a talk, which eats up lots of time and spoils the surprise, maybe give people signposts rather than sort of a detailed map that you take them through before you actually take them on the journey. And I would suggest maybe give a closing summary instead of an introduction. So here's my closing summary. The 3 points I made in my talk were: know what your audience is, include some kind of engagement element, and make sure you give people a good flavour, but don't give them indigestion. If you want a little bit more information about giving talks, here are some things that I looked at. And this actually includes information about things like giving a colloquium to a whole department, or giving a talk for a job, which is a very common situation in which you might need to give a talk to an audience, which includes not just people who would know about your area of maths, but sort of know about another area of maths, but you still need to convince them that you're a good communicator if you're giving a job talk. So this is, maybe you'd like to take a screenshot of this. That's 3 particularly useful articles that I read, with the warning going with the third one. Remember, it's some decades old, and I'm sure you'll have to look past the pronouns when you look at that one. And so I've finished, Rena.